It has been a huge week in Carolina athletics. Just last weekend, Carolina beat Duke in the Final Four, just came ever so close to winning the national championship on Monday against Kansas. Right now, as we speak, Austin Greaser is playing in the Masters. Come on! And then tomorrow, Saturday, is Carolina's spring football game for 2022. I want to help get you prepped for that today. And to do so, I've got Patrick Marsh joining me. Patrick was a long snapper in the early 2000s for the Tar Heels, and he's going to give us some behind the scenes, firsthand perspective on what it means to be a Tar Heel football player going through spring practice and the spring game. All of that coming up on today's episode of Locked On Tar Heels.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, it's Friday, April 8th, 2022. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, beat writer for Sports Illustrated's All Tar Heels site. It's a great day to be together to talk Tar Heels. As always, you can find our shows anywhere you listen to podcasts, and it's free and available. Please make sure you go and subscribe. And if you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and hit that like button. Let us know you are here, and go ahead and hit subscribe if you haven't already. This community is growing like wildfire. It's so incredible to be part of, and you're missing out if you're not doing it. So, man, it's going to be a big day. As I said, we've got this interview with Patrick Marsh. We're going to get right into it as we learn about him, who he is, and what he's up to. And I am joined here today by Patrick Marsh, former member of the Carolina football team. It is great to have him here. So many good things going on in Carolina sports. We're just coming off the men's runner-up in the basketball NCAA Tournament final. Austin Greaser is playing in the Masters as we speak. And today we are getting ready for Carolina Spring Football Game coming up tomorrow from Kenan Stadium. It's going to be awesome. And so Patrick is here today to help give us the insight of a Tar Heel football player, what it means to do that, to go through spring practice and the spring game. But before we get to all that, I want to give us all the opportunity to get to know Patrick a little bit, who he is, what he does, and his heart. Patrick, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And I was actually spent most of my morning with two computer screens at my desk, and one was on Austin Greaser and what he was doing, kept following up. And my students I teach, and my students were kind of giving me a hard time about why I wasn't watching Tiger. I was watching some guy they never heard of. So, yeah.
That's awesome. But, Tar Heels family.
That's right.
That's great. So, Patrick, if you would, just tell us about yourself. Where are you from? How did you get to Carolina? And just tell us that story.
Yeah, so I am from Mooresville, North Carolina. It's just north of Charlotte. I am quite literally Tar Heel born and bred. Both my parents are Tar Heels. They met when they were both living in Aaron House dorm. And so grew up a Carolina fan. We had season tickets to football games when I was a kid, way up in the nosebleeds, kind of the northeast corner. So you're kind of right above now where the visiting team runs out, but it used to be the old field house. And just always dreamed of being a Tar Heel. And so, I kind of, as long as I can actually, my kids stayed up and watched the Duke game on Saturday night. And I can still remember in '93, I was in the third grade, and my parents let me stay up to watch the national championship game. And that is a memory that is like, yes, that is just burned into my head. And kind of one of those moments that kind of solidifies your kind of Tar Heel fandom.
Yep, I'm right with you. That's my first Carolina basketball memory is that game. So that's awesome. So tell us how you went from Mooresville and made your way to playing football at UNC.
Yeah, so I was an option quarterback in high school, and I also long snapped. And I was recruited by a lot of the Ivy League schools. I was a good student, recruited by a lot of the Ivy League schools and the academies. And I actually ended up signing with West Point out of high school, and kind of their role for me was I was going to snap, and then I was going to, at the time, Army was kind of a spread, throw it everywhere team, and they had brought in actually a bunch of Texas kids to play quarterback. That was kind of where you went to find those guys in the early 2000s, and they wanted me to snap and then run the scout team when they played Navy and Air Force, because they knew that was going to be what they were going to face every year.
Yeah.
And so I went up there, I did basic training, and found out that some of the things that they had told me when they were recruiting me weren't completely honest. And as an 18-year-old kid that grew up dreaming of being a Tar Heel, I didn't handle that very well, and was like, I'm out. And so I left after basic training, went back home. Actually spent a year at a community college back in Mooresville, coached high school football, got into officiating wrestling, which I did all through college. I wrestled in high school, and then went to Carolina. I graduated high school in 2002, and actually got to Carolina in the fall of 2003.
Very good. Man, that's great. And interestingly, speaking of Carolina wrestling, just had an opportunity to interview Keyshawn Clark today, and his national runner-up. Man, what a guy! What a run for him! That was incredible.
It was.
So, Patrick, yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I loved the way he wrestled in the tournament. Was just, he was so explosive and just fearless. I loved it.
Yes, absolutely. So if you're listening or watching, be on the lookout for that interview coming up next week on Locked On Tar Heels. Okay. So Patrick, you get to Carolina in 2003, and then you're really wanting to play football still, I'm guessing. So how did you work your way towards making the team?
So my dad was a high school football coach and had been in contact. And so I kind of, at the time, it wasn't really a preferred walk-on type thing. That was starting to become a thing, but wasn't totally a thing. But it was more of just the relationships that the staff has with high school coaches. And they, if you've got a kid that's coming and wants to play, send some film. And I had been to the camps, and they had seen me snap before and knew what I could do. And so they knew I was coming, and I kind of had a spot already. But in college, there's 85 scholarships. And there's typically about 130 or so guys on the team when you add in the walk-ons, but only 105 can come to training camp. And I just kind of assumed I was going to be one of those 25 or so guys that came at the start of class. And that summer I was actually working at Davidson College, digging ditches, literally digging ditches. And I was in the car and got a call from Coach Bunning one day, like the 1st of August or end of July, whatever it was, and said, we decided we want to bring you into camp, so you need to report in 2 days. So literally had 2 days to get ready to go to college for the first time.
Wow.
But yeah, so went to training camp and was thrown into the fire pretty quickly. But yeah, there's my cat.
Man. Hey, this is what we do. It's podcasting. That's great. And so training camp, and then you played for a couple years. Were on the team. Tell us about that experience.
Yeah, so I was there for all four football seasons. I was, because of the year at the community college, I had a year of credits. So I was in undergrad for 3.5 years, but all 4 of my seasons of playing. So I was a walk-on. I didn't travel. My first 2 years was just kind of scout team, kind of a body fodder. Really took a lot of beatings the first 2 years. My first 2 years, Greg Warren was our long snapper, who played for 10, 12 years with the Steelers, won a couple Super Bowls, had a great career. And then my junior year, I became the backup to a guy named Warren Green. And then he graduated, and my senior year, won the starting job as long snapper, snap punts. And they put me on scholarship for that last year. And
wow.
So, yeah. really,
That's awesome.
yeah, it was great. I remember calling my parents and at the end of training camp, kind of a week right before the start of game week. It was 2006 was my last year, and Coach Bunning kept me after a meeting. He was our position coach, so we had position meetings, and he kept me after the meeting and he told me, you're going to be the guy, you're going to be the starter, and we're going to put you on scholarship. And so I leave that meeting and call my parents, and all my mom hears is we're going to put you on scholarship, and all I heard was you're going to be the guy that's going to get to play. And so, you know, all about perspective.
Man,
But,
congrats!
yeah,
What a cool moment. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's incredible. And so, Patrick, what do you do today?
Now I am a sport administration professor at Samford University in Birmingham, Alabama. So I did the 4 years at Carolina, undergrad in sport administration. Then after that, I graduated in December of 2006. I actually spent a semester, the spring semester of 2007, as a middle school in-school suspension supervisor back home, which is as much fun as it sounds. And then I went back to school and did master's in sport administration at Carolina. The second year of that program is a full-time internship in the athletic department. My internship was at the Smith Center when Carmichael closed down to be renovated. And so everything moved over to the Smith Center. They were going to need some extra help. That was my internship. That internship turned into a job. So I was at the Smith Center for 2 years total. And then when Carmichael reopened, I moved back over to Carmichael and was there doing facility and event management for 4 years. And then in 2014, I went to Baylor. So my wife and I moved to Texas. I went to Baylor to do a PhD in sport management, and then came to Samford in 2019.
Awesome. Man, that's a fun journey, and hopefully no confliction in your house in the second round of this year's NCAA tournament when the Tar Heels.
I actually had I was having lunch with Joe, who is a mutual friend of ours, and one of our students, and we had it on our phones as we were having lunch, and I was almost as much of a nervous wreck watching the Baylor game as I was the Duke game, just because I knew if we didn't win that one, especially after the way it got started, that I was going to hear it from all of the people back in Waco. So
yeah,
but no,
absolutely.
There's no doubting my loyalties there.
Yes, I love that. Well, as part of the Carolina football family, Patrick is obviously no stranger to the perils of spring football practice and everything that comes with it. We're going to pack all of that in just a moment, but first, let me tell you about Built Bar. Built Bars are a great candy bar replacement option covered in 100% real chocolate. Some of the great flavors include mint brownie, coconut almond, and now white chocolate shamrock. They're all delicious, and Built Bar is coming out with new flavors all the time. What they're really working on is the taste. They're going to make it be awesome to eat, and then go back and figure out how to make it healthy. I'm not sure how they pull it off, but they always do. So go to Built.com and scroll down to the macros chart. You're going to love what you see there. High protein, low calorie, high fiber, low carb. To give you some of the numbers, just 130 calories, only 4 grams of sugar, only 4 net carbs, but yet 17 grams of protein. And when you compare that to a regular candy bar, we're talking about 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. That's not what you want. So instead, go to Built.com and use promo code LOCKED15 and you'll get 15% off your next order. Again, that's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. We are here on Locked On Tar Heels today talking with Patrick Marsh, former long snapper for the University of North Carolina football team. It's so great to have Patrick here, and right now we're going to start talking about what it's like to experience spring practice as a football player. So, Patrick, I know there's going to be a lot of about it, so let's start in the good places. What do you love about spring practice?
There is a lot of development in spring practice. It is a chance to to get better, especially early in my time at Carolina. Um, Spring practice is where everybody gets reps. And so developing as a young player, you need those reps. And it's one of those things where you're not trying to get ready to play a game. You don't have anybody to beat on Saturday. So the coaches are really, everybody is in there doing it and trying to get better. So they can see who's going to be ready come the fall, and B, get the people more experience that need that experience, and get them live-ish action. I mean, there's no way to replicate a game, but spring practice is physical. My younger brother actually played at Carolina as well. He's 7 years younger, but he kind of was through all of the Butch Davis to Everett Withers to Larry Fedora's first year was his senior year. And then he actually came back and was a GA Fedora's last year and then Mack's first year. And so we were talking about it, but he was an offensive lineman. And so to them, it was totally about reps because they didn't change anything. Like they're always going to be kind of hitting. But in the fall, skill position players don't get hit in practice. Like there's no contact really. I mean, a little bit of thuds and whatnot, but in the spring, it's physical. And there were some. I remember one time, I think it was my second spring, we were doing this drill, and we had gotten moved from the regular like grass practice fields to the field hockey field, which is the old school turf. It's not new, and it was a like kickoff coverage drill or something, I think. But I was holding a dummy, and basically all of the tight ends and linebackers and fullbacks on our team got a 10 to 15-yard run and go. I was allowed to take one step, and there was another guy with a ball about 5 yards behind me, and they basically just ran me over and went and tackled me. But I mean, it was spring practice. Spring practice sucks. Like there's no other. Like it is physical and violent, and I mean it's trying to replicate the physicality of the game of real live games for everybody that's not a lineman, more or less. There's really no way for the lineman to not have that type of engagement during the season. But the rest is more of the kind of 7-on-7 style where, it's two-hand touch football in practice. And in the spring, it's not like that. So, but
that's great. Sorry, go ahead.
Important. That's what I said. Getting the reps is important. That's really I grew a lot in spring practice. I can say that for sure.
Is there any amount of weeding out that happens in spring practice, or is it just about like seeing what you got?
Oh, there's certainly there's weeding out all the time, but spring practice for sure. Whether it's overt or not, like there's always going to be. You'll find out who is not. There's an aspect of, especially now with the transfer portal, like there will be guys that are going to be treated differently in a way that's intended to say, hey, maybe you should look somewhere else. But I think when I was playing, especially for walk-ons, it was, do you really want to be here? Is this really what you want to do? And you have to prove that to the coaching staff. You have to prove that to your teammates, to the guys that are on scholarship. And that, it is, you see so much of what people think of being a walk-on comes from Rudy. But there are aspects of like, he's smaller and kind of gets beat around, and it's because he's just not physically ready or whatever. And there is a very prominent physical aspect to that. Like you have to build your, like I wasn't physically ready when I showed up in the fall of 2003. But there are other aspects of that that are that maybe get you see some of it in the movie, but like the mental and emotional toll that it takes to be beat on like that, but to also have people either just overtly tell you or in roundabout ways tell you you're not good enough takes the emotional toll. Um, but it's also important because it's true. Like you're not good enough at that point. Like if you want to do this, you've got to get better. And part of spring practice, a lot of spring practice for me was getting better. And even the time leading up to spring practice, I think that's one of the things that maybe the public doesn't know about or see as much as the time to get back early to mid January until spring practice starts is a big physical development time. Like you are getting after it in the weight room and in conditioning. And we had, I think, like Coach Fedora called it Blue Dawn. I don't know what they call it, but the morning workouts where you go into the indoor at 6 o'clock in the morning in the winter, and you're having to get there when it's freezing cold and trudging through the snow and whatever. But then it's just nothing but conditioning, and you're going from station to station, and it's super high intensity, and that is a big, like, it's hard. It's really hard. But that's when you get better. And the weed out aspect of that is they're going to push you and beat on you and see if you really want to get better and if you're willing to put in the work. And if not, this probably isn't for you. And there are not a lot of upperclassmen walk-ons. Most of your walk-ons are freshmen, some sophomores, and then the little smattering of juniors and seniors.
That's incredible. And you worked your way all the way through that up to earning a scholarship. That's incredible, Patrick. So the reward for going through all the suck of spring practice is that it culminates in a football game, and you actually get to go play finally. And so we're going to talk all about that in just a second. But first, let me tell you about BetOnline. BetOnline is your #1 source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, including this week's Masters Championship odds, podcasts, and reviews for all the different leagues this season. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, we are here on Locked On Tar Heels today with Patrick Marsh, former long snapper for the Tar Heels. And Patrick talked in the last segment about these Blue Dawn moments, these crazy early mornings. And so before we get to actually talking about the game, I know Patrick has a crazy story to share about one of those mornings.
Yeah, so my last spring, it would have been the spring of 2006, we had our morning workouts, and the way they would kind of function is there'd be a bunch of different stations. So like every position coach would have their station. So there'd be like 10, 11 stations, something like that, where you're doing different agilities or conditioning or whatever. But one of the stations was always mat drills. So like you'd be doing monkey rolls or, how well you can move side to side and get up and roll and get up and roll. And, it's just wearing you out and moving. But then the kind of whole big workout always culminated in 3 wrestling matches. So when I was playing, we had 3 different groups of players. So there was skill, combo, and line. And so, the skill positions were the DBs and the wide receivers. Combo was tight ends, fullbacks, and linebackers. And then the long snappers, we were in that group. And then the linemen were the offensive and defensive linemen. And so there'd be an offensive guy and a defensive guy paired against from each of those 3. So 2 skill, 2 combo 2-line. We'd have 3 wrestling matches, and it was always with guys that like hadn't wrestled before, and it was just like really kind of this whole machismo, toss each other around kind of deal. And So we had a linebacker named Larry Edwards. He was a starting linebacker. Actually, he bounced around the NFL for a year or two. Really good football player who was he was from Florida, but he had wrestled in high school, and he kept begging our strength coach, Coach Connors, put all this stuff on, and he kept begging Coach C to let him wrestle, and he's like, "I'm not going to let you wrestle anybody. Like, you know what you're doing. That's not fair." And finally, they were like, "Well, have him wrestle Marsh." He wrestled, and I was like, "All right, yeah, I'm game. Let's do it." And so uh, the day before in the weight room, they would post the pairings, and he would give the Coach C would give us like professional wrestler like nicknames. And so and those 3 matches would get posted, so everybody knew what was coming the next morning. And so one day it got posted, and it was Larry Shatter You Like Glass Edwards against the Great White Marshmallow. and so we wrestled, and I won, and I beat Larry. And the one thing that is still like an image that is seared into my mind, we had an offensive lineman named Brian Chacos who played 6 years for Carolina before before COVID made that a real thing. And he's now actually works for the Rams club. Super great guy, but he's huge. He's an offensive lineman. He's like 6'6". At the time he's 320 pounds or whatever. And, Coach Connors would referee, and he slapped the mat, and I got up, and the first thing I remember is Chacos running at me like this, waving his hands, and it was just this massive man. And I'm like, that is an image that I will never forget. But there's a lot of work and a lot of being just physically exhausted, but there are always things that remind you that it's still football. It's fun. Like,
yeah.
So that was a good time.
Man, that's phenomenal. Thank you for sharing that story, Patrick. Or excuse me, the Great White Marshmallow. That's
Yes.
phenomenal. I love that. So here we are, Friday. It's Spring Football Day, Spring Football Game Eve. Take us just inside the psyche of a player as you're on a Friday getting ready for this, and then what the experience is like on an actual spring football game day. How similar or different is it from an actual fall Saturday?
It is totally different. There's my first spring. I guess I was probably still kind of in that fan mindset of like, oh, it's the spring game. It's like a game. And I lived in Carmichael Dorm, which butts up to what is now Dorrance Field, Fetzer Field. But it used to have the track, and they were doing, I don't remember if it was Relay for Life or like the dance marathon or something like that. But they blasted music all night long. And like I got like no sleep, and I was so mad because I was like, I got a game tomorrow. Like, what am I going to do? The spring game is a scrimmage. Like, it's another day of practice for the players. It's fun to have people in the stands and see, but like when we would play a real game, even a home game in the fall, like on Friday night, we go to a hotel. It is like at 4:00 or 3:00, whenever we would report to the football center to start, like it was all business from then until the game was over. And with the spring game, you'll roll in, you'll have some breakfast. Everybody's just kind of goofing off. Go have your position meetings and whatever, kind of get ready for the game. And then like the scrimmage is no different than any other scrimmage that you would have in the spring practice. Like it's intense, like, and it's you're playing as if it were a game, but the focus isn't on winning the game. It's about performing well and being able to win your your positional battles. Like, there is some, like, you're trying to win a spot to be able to play in the fall. You want to be able to show that you're good enough to play. And so that part, like the intensity level is there, but it's not for really the same reasons. But really the mindset is it's almost over. Like spring practice is almost over. And the things we would look forward to the most, like we would always have an autograph session after the games, and like your family and friends would be coming in, and there'd be some meal that you'd have, and then after the game you get this, like, one thing about being special, autograph days were a lot more fun for us than I think they were for a lot of other people. One, we didn't get a whole lot of lines, but what we did get was we always got, like, we would have the really pretty girls come into our autograph booth, and a lot of kids, and like we got to goof off and do stuff. And I mean, specialists are known for being goof offs, but it was like the one time when it was like beneficial and acceptable, and that part was fun. But really, like the spring game meant it's over. Now we can go and we can do this autograph thing and have some fun. We're gonna have a meal, and then tonight we're gonna party. Like it's over, it's done. We've got our like 3 to 4 weeks of downtime that you get in a year. It's coming up. Like there's this like freedom of spring ball is done now. You got exams in 2 weeks, so you don't like have to be in the books right now. But the next month is just going to be your kind of 34 workouts a week and getting that done. And then you get to, into the summer, and then it gets real again in the summer. Like now it's time to start getting ready for the season. So it is it's really about like the excitement for the spring game is more about the excitement for after the spring game.
Yeah. Would you say positions are won or lost during spring and or the spring game, or is that really not until fall?
Yes, a lot of decisions about who's going to be playing comes from the spring. I mean, like after Saturday, people will know we won't know. The coaches and probably the players will know who the quarterback's going to be.
Interesting.
I mean, you can tell nobody's going to say anything because they want them to keep pushing each other. And is there still a competition? Yes, probably, but they pretty much know who the guys. And if they don't, that's probably not good. But they're never going to say it because they want them to keep competing and pushing. But there's a very strong part of who's going to be there's 130 people. There's like 50 or 60 that are going to play. They got a pretty good idea who those 50 or 60 are going to be. Now, which one is going out first and who's going to be the backup and some of that stuff, there's still some wiggle room in that. But as far as the spring game itself goes, it's just another of the 15 practices. Like your performance, like people are going to go to the spring game and say, Drake Maye played great and he's going to be the quarterback, or Criswell played great, he's going to be the quarterback. It's no different than what they did on Tuesday. Like that, it's not a game. Like there's no, it's because they're a gamer. This isn't a game. It's practice. They're still lining up against guys from Carolina on the other side.
So if I understand what you're saying, don't put too much stock into what you see on Saturday in terms of playing time for the fall.
Right.
Okay. Very good. Everybody hear that? Okay, let's not get out of hand after what happens on Saturday. That is what Patrick Marsh is saying. So, man, Patrick, thank you so much for all this time, all this information, and kind of behind the scenes. It's so helpful for those of us that don't have an ounce of what you have in your body. So That is fantastic. So, I have one big last question for you.
All right.
And this one I've purposefully not told you because I want it to just be off the cuff. I just want to hear your heart's response to it. What does it mean to you to be a North Carolina Tar Heel?
This is you probably this could be a very long answer, so just buckle up because this is actually something that I think about a lot, and it's something that I have learned from a lot of different people at different times throughout my life. But being a Tar Heel is about people. There is a family aspect to Carolina athletics that is truly unique and truly special. I think the best example that I can give comes, excuse me, from basketball. When I was working at the Smith Center for, excuse me, for about the first month and a half to 2 months that I was at the Smith Center, I shared an office suite. It was me and my boss, Angie Bidding, who ran the Smith Center for 25, 30 years. And then the rest of our office suite was Coach Smith, Coach Guthridge, and Miss Woods, who was their administrative assistant. And we were doing some renovations to the Smith Center and moving offices, and everybody had to pack up all their stuff. And, I was 24, 25 at the time, so I was doing a lot of the manual labor of moving a lot of things, and we had gotten everything packed up and moved, and it was all kind of done. And then like the last thing that needed to happen was all the trash to get thrown out. And Angie told me, she's like, all right, you need to get rid of the trash, but before you do anything, go through Coach Smith's trash and make sure he's not throwing away anything he doesn't need to throw away. All right, cool. And I'm like, great, I get to go through trash. So I'm going through his trash. I found a Final Four ring. I found a National Coach of the Year plaque. Like just stuff like that. I'm like, what? Like stuff that's literally in the basketball museum right now. And then I threw that out, and I got up to like the new offices. They were in a different suite than we were. And Miss Wood said, I need your help. We got to get this stuff up now before Coach Smith gets back. And it was all sorts of wedding announcements and birth announcements and things from players. And these birth announcements, the kids that were being announced in the birth announcements were older than me. And it was like, if that stuff's not there and ready to go, like he's having none of. But that's what it was. It was about the wins and the accolades, and none of that mattered. It was about the people and their lives, and that is not something that is unique to Coach Smith. I think he set the standard for that, and it rubbed off into the rest of the athletic department. But I was in a lot of meetings when I was in Carmichael with other coaches and staffs where, they would be talking about what they needed to do from an X's and O's standpoint, what they needed to do from a, what the building needed to happen, what marketing needed to happen, and all the aspects of their program. And then there would be really long, hard, in-depth conversations about life problems of their student athletes. How can we help them? And that is something I think that has carried over into my life now, especially with kind of my position as a professor and working with students, that I am forever grateful for, because that really is what being a Tar Heel is about. It is that whole, you'll see a lot of stuff about the Carolina family and then the brotherhood down the road. But like the Carolina family is real. Like it is. There's no show to it. I've got a teammate that comes back and speaks to my class about what he's doing, that he works in minor league baseball every year. Like, it's just like, you can always call on your brothers, and it's truly special.
Man, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Patrick. And folks, that is the real deal. What is life worth if it's not about doing it with each other, loving people well, and honoring who we are as humans? You know what? It's a great day to be at Tar Heel. Patrick Marsh, thank you so much, brother, for joining us. Absolutely enjoy the game tomorrow. Get that out of here, whatever that is floating around in this office. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Great. I enjoyed it, and can't wait to do it again sometime.
Yes, sir. Thank you. My thanks to Patrick Marsh, the Great White Marshmallow. Hello, that's incredible, for joining me today to just give us all an inside look at what it means, what the psyche is of players preparing for spring practice, going through it, and the spring game, and then everything that comes after. I hope you got a better understanding of it today. Maybe we're able to see what it's like to go through all that. Please, if you would, go subscribe to the show wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. While you're there, please rate, review, give the show 5 stars, particularly if you listen on Apple Music. That is a great way to just get more people invested and involved in the show. As always, you can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Heels, and you can follow me on Twitter at Isaac Shade. That's ISAACSCHADE. Would love to hear more stories. We've had so many great stories coming in from the Duke Final Four game. Again, we're calling those Carolina family stories, and you can email the show lockedontarheels@gmail.com to share those. Coming up next week, we're going to have some great stuff. As we referenced in the show today, we're going to have national runner-up, 140-pound wrestler Keyshawn Clark is going to join me. That's going to be an incredible interview. Can't wait for you to hear that. We're going to unpack the spring game. All sorts of great content, as always, next week on Locked On Tar Heels. In fact, thank you again for making Locked On Tar Heels your first listen every single day, and I want to now encourage you to make Locked On NFL Draft your second listen. Ryan Tracy and former NFL cornerback Eric Crocker bring the NFL Draft to life every day with insight and analysis on college football prospects and NFL front offices. Just like every other show on the Locked On Network, it's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. What a great week it's been. It's just been a fun week on the show, talking basketball, looking a little bit ahead to next year's basketball, hanging out with Patrick today, talking with him, just some great stuff. Thanks so much for tuning in this week and talking Carolina sports with me. I have a blast doing this, and I hope you enjoy the conversations as well. Well, you know what? It's a great day to be a Tar Heel. I hope you have a great weekend. And until next time, peace!